Hello, this is Tomar Levine of Soul Guidance for Awakening. And this is my fourth episode, if you want to call it that, of my first week of daily live streams. This one being on the topic of stepping into the unknown. And I've explored a few different aspects of what that means to us personally. And yesterday I talked a little bit about the implications of the collective nature of our being in the unknown currently, and what a dramatic and unprecedented event it is, in fact, to be sharing this experience with every single human being on the planet. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we mean by the unknown and some of different ways of looking at it. So, by definition, as I've been alluding to, what's unknown is unpredictable. It's not the familiar. It's not the same old, same old. It's not our comfort zone. We don't know what it is. It's dissolving and reforming, or it's dissolving and still remaining in an unformed state. So what I see about that very notion of being in the unknown is that the unknown is like the realm of pure potential. It hasn't yet chosen its destination. We feel uncomfortable with the unknown because we can't predict it, we can't control it, it's not familiar, it's not what we expected, of course. But there's also a tendency of humans, when confronted with the unknown, to project onto that blank screen that something negative is happening or will happen, when we could just as easily project onto it something positive, because we don't know. Not knowing means we don't know. We could flip a coin. It could easily go in one way or another. And so this field of pure potential, there's a term called the plenipotential void, the void from which everything arises, in which all potential, all possibilities are present in a latent form. They haven't been selected for what is going to arise, what is going to manifest, until it actually arises. When it's in that void, in that field of potential, of pure possibility, of infinite possibility, then one thing is as possible as another. And there are factors in play in the world that perhaps lean towards one or another, that tend to select for one or another. This is also often referred to as the quantum field. That's the field of infinite potential before it arises into form. And both from the perspective of quantum mechanics, physics, and the perspective of spiritual consciousness, there's been a lot of discussion in recent years of how these two have come together in an understanding of how reality evolves, how the next thing to arise is called forth out of that void, out of that infinite potential. And even though in our normal life we are surrounded by familiarity and we think we know what to expect, the truth is that every single instant, we are on the edge of a cliff. Every single instant we are stepping off. We are stepping off. We are stepping off because this is where the next instant is. The next instant is arising out of the void, out of the emptiness, out of the unknown. This feeling of being on solid ground, of terra firma, that's the illusion of the moment, but there is no given to what will arise in the next. And I don't just mean that, yes, a brick could fall off a building or I could be hit by a truck. I mean that on a more metaphysical level, there is an understanding that what we call physical reality is continually arising out of nothingness, out of the void, out of the infinite potential. We can't see that. We can't feel that. We don't experience that. But there is, on that plane where quantum physics and metaphysics come together, there is an awareness that what causes that arising has everything to do with consciousness, everything to do with the observer, calling it forth, seeing it, looking. It has everything to do with beliefs. It has everything to do with energetic vibration, which is a roundabout way of saying that this unknown, this field of potential, which could go in one direction or another, is malleable. That is the nature. It's like clay, and anything can arise from it. Anything can be formed from it. And in its malleability, we actually have the capacity, we as conscious humans have the capacity to influence what will be formed out of that clay. We do it all the time unconsciously. In fact, the reason why the world often is manifesting the way it is has to do largely with the collective consciousness of humanity. So if we are seeing difficulties, conditions of scarcity, of lack, of competition, of anxiety, of conflict, has very much to do with the fact that the collective consciousness of humanity has been permeated by beliefs in lack, in scarcity, in fear, in aggression. The consciousness of humanity, the collective experience of humanity, and therefore it gets projected out. That's the expectation. That's the energy beam that is going out, is being directed into this malleable clay of the unknown, this malleable clay of the infinite potential that underlies and precedes in a way that our human mind cannot grasp or certainly cannot perceive. So this consciousness and this energetic impulse is being sent out into what is always the unknown. We just don't see it as that. And now we are made aware that we are living in the unknown. Many people's consciousness is being raised. And so we have the opportunity to influence this malleable clay. We have the opportunity, as they say, to reset, to choose anew. We don't have to go back to the old ways that don't work. And it starts with the awakening of each individual to that awareness that we, as a collective, as humanity, actually have this power, and you and I and every individual also has this power. We are influencing the collective just as the collective influences us. And even though the path of least resistance is often to be dragged down into the collective field, I call it the collective cesspool of negative consciousness, which we've often been taught by our conditioning to believe is true and inevitable. and that permeates us from our culture, our mass media, etc. It's easier to go down the path of least resistance, but all it takes is a little bit of resistance to choose a higher path. And the higher path has more power. The higher energy frequency has more ability to mold that clay, that malleable clay of the infinite potential, than the negative does. The higher vibration always takes precedence over the lower. So for those of us who are aware that we have this latent ability that we haven't really tapped, that we haven't really accessed, for those of us who are aware that we have a say in how the world will turn out, that we can plunge our energetic hands into this malleable clay and form it as something beautiful, it behooves us to use that ability. It behooves us to turn it on, to experiment, and to trust. To trust. To trust. And understand in a deep intuitive way that this picture of reality, which seems to defy the physical and concrete terms that we have been taught to accept, that vision of reality that includes a higher form of safety, that includes being held by the universe, that includes being able to trust in something greater and merge with it and become aware that we are it. That is the higher path, and that's the path we're being called to now. So stepping into the unknown is a wonderful adventure into awakening. And I'll leave you with that for now. Many blessings to you. Bye for now.